Is survival horror dead? No. But it's not that simple. Survival horror was alive and well for many years, beginning with the popularization with Resident Evil back in the 90s. It was a genre founded on the player's lack of control or feeling of control, which the lack of control in the games at the time lended to the feeling of survival horror and fear. Trying to kill a zombie in Resident Evil was a lot scarier when you were trying to figure out just how to turn around and aim. But as time went on, these franchises and genres started to advance with the modern age. Looking at Resident Evil 4 with the controversial switch to over-the-shoulder gameplay, gearing the genre more towards action horror rather than survival horror, losing most of its fear accompanied with it. Which honestly just ended up getting worse and worse with Silent Hill and the release of Downpour all but betraying its core franchise, and Resident Evil 6 basically being more like an Uncharted knockoff rather than the roots that the franchise was founded in. Now after the poster boy titles of the genre came to a sad halt, there left a big gap for many years. And honestly, looking into it, it almost looks like the survival horror genre all but died between 2012 and 2013. And sure, there was one highlight, Outlast, but despite that, there was nothing. And yes, in the coming years, there were a couple highlights, Alien Isolation, The Evil Within, but it looked like it was just slowly disappearing from existence. Now I think this period of drought can be contributed to a lot of things. Fan outcry wanting modernization, changing of generations, big studios no longer wanting to fund survival horror genre games, and instead going the way of the market at the time, which was Michael Bay first-person shooters, or Skyrim ripoffs. Now in this drought, I think it gave way to a flourishing indie developer market. Following in the inspiration and success of games like Amnesia and Outlast, there were some wonderful titles created. But in this overabundance of indie horror games, there also became an overabundance of mediocrity. Which is funny because some people's main defense to the survival horror genre not being dead is, look at all these indie horror games. Okay, that's great, there's a lot of them, but let's be honest, it's like browsing Netflix. 70% of it is trash, utterly buggy, with stories told like they're generated from AI, and the horror is boiled down to, ooh, gore, or somebody jumped out at me. Then there's the 20%. This is just okay, it's safe. These are the Force Awakens of horror games. They choose to remake, remask, rather than push and innovate. And at the very end of beating these games, you think to yourself, this seems familiar. Then there's the 10%, the cream of the crop. These are the games that choose to push and innovate, create new, remix, and flip the genre on its head, creating fresh games and telling good stories while doing so. Now, I think there is a reason why the topic of overabundance of mediocre horror games isn't really discussed or really known about, and I think it's the same reason that we have an overabundance of horrible, mediocre horror movies. And it's because of this one simple fact. Horror doesn't take a whole lot to impress. Now, let me expand, and I'm well aware this makes me sound like a pretentious douchebag. The average person going to a horror game or a horror movie is after one thing. That feeling of a spiked adrenaline after being scared. And if they get that one thing, they will most likely leave the game or movie saying, wow, that was such a great movie. The jump scares were great. It was so creepy. They're judging it off of the easiest thing to create. The jump scares can be great, but the movie, the game, the piece of content can be utterly trash. Telling a basic story that ends in an oh-so-familiar way. It can be buggy with bad acting and bad gameplay. Oh, but if it's scary and it makes you go, it's great. Now, in my opinion or theory, what happens when we over-reward the mediocre is that we create more of the same. A market dominated by just things that are passable. Because why would they innovate and try to make the next Resident Evil, the next Silent Hill, the next Halloween, or Psycho, when they know what is given time, attention, and money is simply what is passable? Horror is easy to make at a passable level, hard to make at a masterful one. The best horror games, movies, shows, books, at their core, are created from the ground up to impart something. Hereditary and its exploration of family, grief, inheritance, and trauma. BioShock examines fate, destiny, and your own choices and the ambition of man for power and control. Hell, even the original Halloween has a great thematic presence, showing the reality of evil and the fear with it, and the confrontation of that reality. choosing not to ignore it, but accept it. I could use more examples of good horror, but it would be a really long list. The scariest of stories, games included, are the ones that tap into our own human experience. At its core, it's empathy, and fear told through empathy creates something far more long-lasting than a jump scare or a simple scream. It's that feeling that makes you look at your closet door differently, or the people in the grocery store. It's the games that leave you with a feeling of unsettling far past the credits rolling. And these are the pieces of horror that truly transcend mediocrity and go into a permanent place within our heads. But now these are few and far between in all forms of media. The market is fed what the market wants. What sells? Meaningless jump scare gore fest with no characters, no stories, and nothing long lasting. That is the modern playing field. All these words and tangents to really just say, survival horror in gaming isn't dead. But it's really rare that it's great. And my hope with the revitalization of Silent Hill and Resident Evil going back to the core of their roots is that the pendulum will swing in the direction of creating truly good survival horror games and experiences, not just surface level games that simply pass, but games we can look back upon, like the originals, with a timeless eye. An eye that says, in 2 decades, this one will stand.